Manu Chaube from Ishal.life and you are listening to the Leadership Demystified podcast series. I am joined by my co-host Pooja Talesra and I'm really excited to host today's podcast as I'm sure that today's podcast is going to generate a lot of value for you. What do you think, Pooja?
Likewise, Manu, even I'm looking forward for this particular session with you.
Today's guest has over 2 decades of rich experience across organizations and an illustrious career which began as a management trainee back in 1994. Our guest has held top leadership positions at Mitsui and Company, Comviva Technologies, 197 Communication Limited, Madhouse, among other companies, and is now the Managing Director Southeast Asia at Httpool. I'm glad to host Milind Pathak today. Welcome, Milind. It's a huge and a rich career in terms of experience and achievements. Please tell us how your journey started.
Thanks Manu, and thanks Pooja. I'm excited to be on this call. Yeah, it's been a very long journey, and very fun and exciting. I was born and brought up in a traditional Maharashtrian middle class family where you have a daughter, she has to become a doctor. If you have a son, he has to become an engineer. And that's the background, and that's how I went on to do my engineering. Post engineering, in those days, Thermax, and even today, I guess, Thermax was one of the most prestigious engineering industries. And I got Thermax Babcock as a part of my campus placement, I remember. And that started my journey. I was very keen always on marketing and sales. So I completed my, so to say, graduate traineeship for about 9, 10 months. And then I was told, oh, I'm going to be put in purchase department. And young that I was, and little did I care, I said, listen, I'm only interested in sales and marketing. And if you don't put me in sales and marketing, I'm putting in my papers. So those guys thought I'm bluffing. They said, no, yours is final placement is only purchase department. I said, listen, this is not of my interest. I came out of the room. I hand wrote my resignation, put it around there, and I came out. Then I came back to Bombay. That was all in Pune. Then I came back to Bombay. Went on to join Tractors India Limited, which is a part of Caterpillar and Grove. And that's where I real journey for seeing organization, developing organization, building organizations, leading organizations really started.
Amazing that you had such clarity in terms of what you wanted so early, and at the same time, you had the courage to leave what you didn't want. Milan, I'm really curious to know what challenges you faced in your journey and what was that one biggest challenge you had to encounter.
The biggest challenges that I have faced, of course, I have faced all these challenges. I have led a chief operating officer who was, if not more, at least 12 years senior to me when I was leading him. Plus, I've also faced a challenge of leading someone who is almost like half my age. It's fresh out of college now and a management trainee or a graduate trainee or a media trainee. So I've seen both the extremes, right? And both of it is fun. um, I think if you have to ask me one biggest challenge that I have faced across all, or I would not say a challenge, I would more call it a quest that I've always had in working along with people, is to try and understand and see what really inspires a person to kind of give his best shot. I mean, I'll give you a paradox, right? One of my biggest inspiration in my life has been a warrior king of India, in Maharashtra. His name is Shivaji. So, if you realize and if you read his life journey, that guy was able to inspire people to die for the cause. And today we have reached at such level in leadership, we cannot inspire people to let go money to continue a job in the company, right? So someone can inspire someone to die for the country, and I can't inspire someone to stay in my organization for $50,000 or
Uh,
that's a paradox that we live in, right? And we say, oh, leading a person is so difficult. And there was a guy who said, listen, you know what, on his words people were willing to die. So for me, the quest all along my career has always been, what can I do that inspires people? So whether you call it a challenge, whether you call it a quest, I personally call it a quest.
so, Milind, you have had experience in the Japanese culture, across, you have worked with so many global companies. So, what do you think? I mean, we all know that the culture of each organization, it is different with respect to the geography. But what do you think? Even the leadership style, it differs?
Well, whether it's a leadership style or culture, I'm not too sure, right? Because if you look at it, at the end of the day, I would say, yeah, a leadership style is different across all, right? Um, you may have the same objectives, but the way they handle the objectives and the way an Indian leadership or a European leadership will handle the objectives is very, very different. So whichever road you follow, at the end of the day, the objective of leadership is to do the same, which is to ensure that you excel in the domain that you choose to. I don't think that any style is right or wrong. They have all their pros and cons and ups and downs. And in certain circumstances, certain things works, and certain circumstances, certain things don't.
Wow. So I think it's very person dependent. I mean, whichever style a person would adopt, it is more of mix and match and seeing what really works,
Yeah.
as
So
you said.
I'll give you two examples
Yes.
of it, right? One of my first bosses when I was in Caterpillar, I was one day late after I did a long in an I remember in those days the sales calls used to be done during the day. We had no mobile phones, and if you're doing we were in a business trip, then what we would do is um, we would go to the telecommunication booth or an STD booth, and there we would wait for 10 o'clock to happen because after 10 o'clock it used to be one-fourth calling rates, right? All callings used to be one-fourth rate. Then we used to call our boss and update him of the business or whatever it is, right? No, so I remember I was in Bombay at that point in time, and of course our office was in Bombay. So it took me very late. I was very late from one of my business trips, and by the time I reached home, it was like 12:30. And I came to office the next day at whatever 9:30 or so, and our office time was supposed to be 9 o'clock. So I remember he calling me in his cabin and telling me on that day, and that happened only one time, saying that, Milind, why are you late? I said, sir, I came late yesterday night and I was at this place and I came at what, 12:30, 1 o'clock at night. He says, okay, but that's fine that you came late, but why are you late to office today? So he says, no, because I was late. I was just spending time with the family. I woke up a bit late. He says, yeah, it's okay, fine, but next time remember that reaching office at time is your discipline and sitting late is your responsibility. 23 years have gone by since I have heard that sentence. And I, I'll give you one more story. I was in Japan and I spent 3, 4 months as a part of Mitsui. I was selected to do cultural immersion and was always given a privilege to select few who they felt had a long career within the Japanese ecosystem. So I was shipped to Japan to stay like a cultural ambassador, to live the way they live, and so on and so forth, right? So I lived there for almost 3, 4 months, and I remember going out for one of the evening parties, which was often, and then they went on drinking till whatever 2, 3 o'clock in the night, till the time the boss was there, and till the time the client was there. They were all drinking, and at 2:30, 3 o'clock we separated, and the guys they could not even perhaps walk straight and confidence after sitting from 7 till about 2:30 drinking. You can understand what is happening. They were all in senses but a bit high. At 3 o'clock or 2:30 at the night, the boss says, you know what, it's great, but I want to have minutes of meeting at 7 o'clock in the morning on my table. So, and I remember my colleague who was young like me in those days, going back to his dormitory, just sleeping for 3 hours, reaching office, completing his minutes, and ensuring that by 7:05 the report was on the table of the boss. The boss came at 9, which is fine. But the discipline that was there, that, oh, if boss said this has to be done, it has to be done, was like so much into the blood that people did not even take a liberty to not listen to that. And if today we try to do this, there will be a hotline call that will go to the combination of harassment at work.
That's an interesting anecdote, Milind. I'm really curious to know whether, in your opinion, does age, education, and experience matter as far as your ability to lead and inspire is concerned, or is leadership agnostic to these factors?
So the answer to this question is yes and no. Is your software gets more and more hard coded. So till the time you're able to keep your software as a software and not hard code it, I think age doesn't matter. But if as you progress, if your software starts getting very hard coded to say, you know what, uh, I have this prejudice, I have this point of view, I have this opinion, and this is the right way to lead, and this is the wrong way to lead. If you start going that direction, then as you grow, age would impact your leadership. If with age you do not be fluid in your thought process and your general acceptance of world, then I think it's is a problem. Um, Again, with an education, the question is you are learned, but are you educated? That's a question that you should ask your own self all the time. So if you're learning and not upskilling any further, then you have a problem. So I think age and education does impact leadership, but depends on how, as an individual, you are causing that, right?
Interesting analogy, Milind. Uh, I really want to put this question to you right now. Whether the most debatable question on leadership, by the way, uh, do you think leaders are born or leaders are made? Is leadership an acquired skill or is it embedded in your DNA? What do you think?
I think leadership is an acquired skill, and it's about it's about, I think, if you look at most leaders around the world, right, they are extremely self-aware and they are extremely open from a feedback perspective, right? As you grow up the ladder, the more you need to learn to bend, because the more you go high, the further you are from the ground, and hence more you need to bend to ensure that you're picking signals of the ground. Now, most leaders that I have met have an ability to do it, and they remain long-term leaders, right? And leadership or leaders are not people who think we are, but leaders is what people think we are. And so if there is no follower, there is no leader. I can't be sitting in an ivory tower and thinking, why I'm the greatest leader and not a single person willing to follow me, right? And I may not think of myself as a leader, but if 10 people behind feel, oh, he's a good leader for the team, then I'm still a leader. So for me, I think it's more, well, I do not know about cultivated or DNA. I think it's more an acquired skill. You need to be of a chance for that spark of yours to be seen by your surroundings, which is in your early ages, your parents or family, at a later ages, your professors or your friends, at a further age in your career, by your mentors or by the industry peers or whatever it is, right?
And I think you made a very important point out there when you started off value and when we were discussing, and you started off like self-awareness. I think self-awareness is the key point which really differentiates. So, Milind, while we were talking about this kind of skills that a leader needs to have, and we spoke about that leadership, something which is acquired. So, which brings to me a question, probably which may be very contextual right now. Is there any right mix of hard skills like business acumen, technical acumen, and these soft skills which a leader should possess? What is your take on it?
Yeah, so I think you need to look at two inverted triangles sitting next to each other. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
As you start your career, the base is much stronger towards the business or the technical skills. And
Mm-hmm.
as you go progressively high on that triangle, the triangle becomes shorter. And for when it comes to softer skills, you may be a bit less because you're acquiring them in early stages of your career. And as you grow progressively higher, it is more a wider triangle. So imagine two inverted triangles next to each other. One uh, large base to a small base is from for the business skill as the career progresses, and for small base to a large base for leadership and soft skills as the career progresses. I think that's how you should look at it.
One more question. While you were taking us through your journey, and you said you had there were a time, and you were taking us through the various leadership style, and you made a point that today, if this leadership style is being practiced, it wouldn't really go well down with the new generation. So, could you please give us some practical tips of how to manage the millennial generation at work, or how you have been managing? and how to manage a generation which may be a senior in terms of experience. So how to manage those two different set of people? What has really helped you in managing? Some practical tips for the viewers.
Well, I have not differentiated between senior and junior, but I'll tell you one key part that I have followed all along my, rather two elements that I have always ensured, right? Uh, is I have always given the big picture of the company or the objective that we are following,
Mm.
or as we call the cause for which we are together, which is the objective for which we are together. And I've always broken it down to the team or to that lowest level, right? And second point is I have always articulated the role's contribution to that cause and managed on that objective. So saying that, listen, you are in a, you are like a relay marathon. You're not a relay sprint of 1600 meters. You're a relay marathon. And in each, you will be passing over the baton. And that role of yours towards winning the big marathon has to be crystal clear. And the reason I have always done is because I have always believed that in whatever chair you sit in an organization, unless you believe that the cause is bigger than the individual, you will never be able to give 100% to it.
Milind, you have had a 2 decade long career span, and I'm sure you have worked with a lot of people and individuals. And I really want to know your opinion on why we don't have enough gender diversity as far as corporations are concerned today, even in India and in West. Why there is a lack of gender diversity, and what can we do to help corporations achieve a good ratio as far as gender diversity is concerned?
Yeah, so okay, so I have a bit of a controversial point of view on this. I do not believe in gender diversity. Yeah, I don't believe in women diversity because I think ab initio that nomenclature is insulting. I mean, it's like what's the need? I mean, it's we are humans, right? So each human genetically has specific sets of skills, and that skills are better performed by them only on that. For example, a child birth is only possible in a woman and not in a man, which is genetic in nature, right? But the leadership is equally possible in both. There is nothing stopping from one versus the another, right? So for me, societies in centuries have become patriarchal by choice of a man and not by a choice of a woman. And this is unfair, right? So you understand the paradox. While I don't believe in it as a gender diversity cause, I believe extremely in equality of roles. I think basically our society needs to be more empowering and more sensitive to the power and glory of a woman. And I think that's where, and that starts at home and not in company. And that has to start in a household where a mother or a mother-in-law should not shun by having a girl child, should teach ethics and morality to sons of the houses, right? It has to start there.
Thank you, Milind, for joining us on the Leadership Demystified podcast series. It was a great and an enriching discussion with you. Thank you for joining us. Thanks a lot.